You know a game is special when years later you say, one more playthrough, and somehow end up losing another 100 hours. These are the rare games that don't just age well, they pull you back in again and again. In this video, we're talking about 10 absolute masterpieces that never get old. Some are obvious, some might surprise you, and a few completely change the way I look at gaming. By the end, you might be reinstalling one of them tonight. Portal 2 is one of those games that somehow gets even better every time I come back to it. I already know most of the puzzles, and somehow I still end up sitting there with a stupid grin on my face because the writing is just that good. The second Wheatley starts talking, I know I'm in for another unforgettable ride. And honestly, few games have made me laugh as much as this one. One minute you're solving clever test chambers, and the next you're listening to Cave Johnson scream about combustible lemons like it's the most serious thing in the world. But what really makes Portal 2 special is how it constantly surprises you. Just when you think you've seen everything, the game throws some crazy new mechanic at you and completely changes the way you think. Exploring the old abandoned sections of Aperture Science still gives me chills because the atmosphere is incredible. And somehow, despite being a puzzle game, the ending still hits me emotionally every single time. I honestly wish I could erase my memory and experience that final song again for the first time. The only thing I hate about Portal 2 is that it ends, because games this creative barely exist anymore. And trust me, the next game on this list gave me some of the most unforgettable moments I've ever had with a controller. Mass Effect 2 is one of those rare games where I finish the credits and immediately start thinking, okay, what if I made different choices this time? And that's exactly why I've replayed it so many times. Building that squad feels less like recruiting party members and more like putting together the coolest crew in gaming history. Every character has their own baggage, personality, and loyalty mission, and somehow I ended up caring about all of them. Garrus became my best friend, Mordin turned into one of the most memorable characters I've ever seen, and the conversations on the Normandy felt like hanging out with people I'd known for years. What blows my mind is how much your decisions actually matter. I still remember stressing over every choice because I knew somebody could die, and that final suicide mission remains one of the greatest endings ever made. The music, the tension, and that feeling of desperately trying to keep everyone alive had my heart racing like crazy. Sure, the shooting isn't as smooth as modern games, and some of the planet scanning gets old fast, but honestly, I forgive all of that, because the characters and story are just on another level. There are RPGs with bigger worlds and prettier graphics, but very few games have made me feel this attached to a crew. And trust me, the next game on this list made me lose track of time in the most dangerous way possible.
Understood.
Half-Life 2 still blows my mind because it somehow feels ahead of its time even today. Every time I replay it, I keep thinking, how did they pull this off back in 2004? From the moment you step off that train into City 17, there's this weird feeling that something is terribly wrong, and the game never lets go of that atmosphere. I still remember picking up random objects with the gravity gun for the first time and feeling like gaming had suddenly changed forever. And then Ravenholm shows up, and nope, I don't care how many times I've beaten it, that place still creeps me out. One minute you're driving across beautiful coastlines, the next you're running for your life from zombies while a crazy preacher is yelling in the background. That's what I love about Half-Life 2. It constantly changes things up before anything gets old. Even without long cutscenes or endless dialogue, I felt completely immersed in Gordon Freeman's journey. Alex remains one of the most likable companions ever, and those final hours inside the Citadel still feel epic. Sure, some vehicle sections drag a little longer than I remember, but honestly, that's a tiny complaint compared to how revolutionary this game was. It's crazy how many modern shooters owe something to Half-Life 2, and yet very few capture that same magic. But speaking of games that completely changed the industry, the next one made me forget what sleep was for an entire summer. Arkham City was the moment I stopped feeling like I was playing a Batman game and started feeling like I actually was Batman. Seriously, the first time I launched myself off a rooftop and glided across the city while that music kicked in, I knew I was playing something special. Even now, replaying it feels dangerous because I always tell myself, I'll do one mission, and then suddenly it's 3 in the morning and I'm hunting Riddler trophies. The combat still feels incredible. Chaining counters together and taking down entire rooms without getting hit makes you feel like an absolute legend. And those Predator sections? They're basically every Batman fantasy come to life. I loved watching enemies panic as I picked them off one by one from the shadows. What really keeps bringing me back, though, is the atmosphere. Arkham City feels dirty, chaotic, and alive, and the villains absolutely steal the show. Mark Hamill's Joker is perfection, and the twists near the end still hit hard no matter how many times I see them. I won't spoil anything, but that final scene never gets easier. Sure, some of the side missions are hit or miss, and collecting every Riddler trophy can make you question your sanity, but that's a small price to pay for one of the greatest superhero games ever made. And somehow, the next game on this list made me care about a bunch of blocky characters more than some Hollywood movies. Nier Automata is one of those games that completely caught me off guard. I went in expecting a cool action game with flashy combat, and I came out questioning life while staring at the credits with tears in my eyes. No joke, this game messed with my head in the best possible way. The combat feels amazing, especially when you're switching weapons and weaving between bullets like you're playing some crazy mix of an action game and a bullet hell shooter. But what really keeps pulling me back is the atmosphere. There's something weirdly beautiful about exploring these ruined cities while that soundtrack kicks in. I swear, there are songs in this game that instantly transport me back to specific moments years later. And then there's the story. At first, I thought I knew where things were going, and then the game basically looked me in the face and said, "You have no idea what's coming." The fact that you're not even close to finished after the first ending still blows my mind. Every replay reveals new details, new emotions, and somehow makes previous scenes hit even harder. Sure, some side quests can feel slow, and having to replay certain sections isn't everyone's favorite thing, but when everything comes together in those final endings, it's unforgettable. I've played a lot of games that entertained me, but very few stayed in my head like Nier Automata. And trust me, the next game on this list gave me one of the greatest open-world adventures I've ever experienced. Sekiro. Shadows. Die Twice absolutely destroyed me the first time I played it, and I mean that as the highest compliment possible. This game humbled me harder than almost anything I've ever touched. I came in thinking, I've beaten tough games before, how bad can it be? And then some random mini-boss sent me back to the checkpoint so many times that I started questioning my life choices. But that's the magic of Sekiro. It doesn't let you hide behind overpowered builds or summon help. Eventually, you stop trying to survive and start learning how to fight. And when it finally clicks, oh man, nothing feels better. Deflecting an entire combo, hearing those swords clash, and breaking an enemy's posture at the perfect moment still gives me chills. I can still remember the first time I beat Genichiro. I literally stood up from my chair like I had just won a championship. And don't even get me started on Ishin. That old man had me fighting for my life, but beating him felt more satisfying than finishing some entire games. What I love most is how replayable it is. Once you've mastered the mechanics, you start feeling like an unstoppable shinobi, pulling off moves that seemed impossible during your first run. Sure, the learning curve is brutal, and some bosses will make you yell at your screen, but that's exactly why the victories feel so incredible. Years later, I still reinstall Sekiro just to hear those swords collide again. And somehow, the next game on this list made me lose myself in a world so beautiful that I spent hours doing absolutely nothing and loved every second of it. Ghost of Tsushima is one of those games I reinstall even when I don't have anything specific to do. Sometimes I just want to ride across the island, follow the wind, and soak in that atmosphere all over again. Seriously, this game is ridiculously beautiful. I still remember the first time I walked through a field of golden grass while leaves were flying everywhere and thinking, okay, this is basically a playable samurai movie. But it's not just pretty. The combat is so satisfying that I never get tired of it. Switching stances, perfectly timing a parry, and ending a duel with one clean strike makes you feel like an absolute badass. And those duels? Some of them had me completely locked in, especially when the music kicked in and it felt like something straight out of a classic Akira Kurosawa film. What surprised me most, though, was how attached I got to Jin. Watching him struggle between honor and doing whatever it takes to save his people made the story hit harder than I expected. And I can't lie, that horse scene still hurts. If you know, you know. Sure, the open-world structure gets a little repetitive after dozens of hours, and some side activities start blending together. But honestly, I didn't even care, because exploring Tsushima itself felt rewarding. I spent way too much time chasing foxes, writing haikus, and taking screenshots instead of progressing the story. That's how immersive this world is. But the next game on this list, let's just say it made me care about a cowboy and his gang more than I thought possible. The Witcher 3. Wild Hunt ruined side quests for me, and I mean that in the best way possible. Every time I replay it, I tell myself I'm going to focus on the main story, and every single time I get distracted for 50 hours because some random quest turns into a story better than entire games. That's what makes this game so dangerous. You start hunting a monster for some extra coins, and suddenly you're caught in some emotional mess with choices that actually make you sit there staring at the screen, wondering what the right answer even is. Geralt became one of my favorite protagonists because he feels like a real person. He's sarcastic, tired, and somehow always ends up dealing with everyone else's problems. And don't even get me started on Bloody Baron. I expected a typical side character, and instead, I got one of the most unforgettable stories I've ever experienced. Then there's Skellige. I swear, hearing that soundtrack while sailing between islands instantly hits me with nostalgia. And when Hearts of Stone and Blood and Wine showed up, it felt like I got 2 more incredible games for free. Sure, the combat isn't perfect, and Roach sometimes acts like he graduated from clown school, but honestly, I laugh more than I complain. That's part of the charm. Years later, I still find quests and little details I somehow missed before. That's crazy. But somehow, the next game on this list managed to deliver one of the most emotional journeys I've ever had in gaming, and I still think about its ending all these years later. Cyberpunk 2077 is one of those games that hit me in a weird way because I didn't just play it, I stuck with it through all the chaos. And now, after everything, I actually find myself coming back to it more than I expected. Night City is just insane. Every time I boot it up, I end up standing in the middle of the street just watching the world move. Neon everywhere, ads screaming at you, cars flying past like it's completely normal. It feels alive in a way that's almost overwhelming. But what really pulls me back is V's story. Depending on how you play it, it can go from fun and chaotic to something surprisingly emotional. Johnny Silverhand constantly messing with your head adds this whole layer of tension that never really leaves you. And I'll be honest, I didn't expect to care about him at all at first, but some of his moments actually stick with you. The gameplay also finally feels where it should be after all the updates. Gunfights are smooth, hacking actually feels useful, and when you build your character right, you can turn into a total monster in combat. But it's not perfect. Some parts of the open world still feel a bit empty compared to how alive it looks from a distance, and a few side gigs can blend together. Still, when the main story hits, especially those ending paths, it hits hard, and I think that's why I keep coming back. Cyberpunk 2077 isn't just about the hype or the controversy anymore. It's about that feeling of being stuck in a city that doesn't care if you survive or not. But the next game on this list? This one isn't about futuristic chaos at all. It's about something way more personal, and it might just be the most emotional story we've talked about so far. Nier Automata is one of those games that completely caught me off guard. I went in expecting a cool action game with flashy combat, and I came out questioning life while staring at the credits with tears in my eyes. No joke, this game messed with my head in the best possible way. The combat feels amazing, especially when you're switching weapons and weaving between bullets like you're playing some crazy mix of an action game and a bullet hell shooter. But what really keeps pulling me back is the atmosphere. There's something weirdly beautiful about exploring these ruined cities while that soundtrack kicks in. I swear, there are songs in this game that instantly transport me back to specific moments years later. And then there's the story. At first, I thought I knew where things were going, and then the game basically looked me in the face and said, "You have no idea what's coming." The fact that you're not even close to finished after the first ending still blows my mind. Every replay reveals new details, new emotions, and somehow makes previous scenes hit even harder. Sure, some side quests can feel slow, and having to replay certain sections isn't everyone's favorite thing, but when everything comes together in those final endings, it's unforgettable. I've played a lot of games that entertained me, but very few stayed in my head like Nier Automata. And trust me, the next game on this list gave me one of the greatest open-world adventures I've ever experienced. Red Dead Redemption 2 is the kind of game that doesn't just tell a story, it slowly pulls you into it until you forget you're even playing a game. The first time I really paid attention to it, I thought I was just going to do a couple of missions. Next thing I know, I'm riding through the mountains during a storm, listening to Arthur talk about things that actually feel heavy, real, and personal. What makes this game hit so hard is Arthur Morgan. At first, he feels like just another outlaw doing his job, but the more time you spend with him, the more human he becomes. His journal entries, the way he reacts to people, the way his perspective slowly changes depending on your choices, it all builds into something you don't forget. I still remember moments where I just stopped playing and sat there thinking about what just happened. And the world, man, it's unbelievable. You're not rushing through it. You're living in it. One minute you're in a chaotic shootout. The next you're just riding your horse through open fields while the sun sets and the music quietly takes over. It's slow in a way that some people don't expect, but that's exactly why it sticks. Sure, the controls can feel heavy, and sometimes it moves slower than modern games, but honestly, that pace is what makes everything hit harder. When something important happens, you feel it more because you've actually been there for the journey. And that ending. It's one of those endings you don't just finish, you carry it with you. And that's the list. 10 games that aren't just fun to play once, but somehow pull you back every single time. Some for the gameplay, some for the story, and some just for the feeling they leave behind. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button, subscribe for more gaming videos like this, and tell me in the comments which game you've replayed the most or which one I should cover next.